You're listening to the Fan to Fan podcast, and this is part 2 of Video Store Memories. Here we go. Welcome to the Fan to Fan podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Gonzalez, and today we're talking video store memories, or more accurately, other people are. I've been very fortunate to feature a wide range of guests on the podcast that have been incredibly generous with their time and their knowledge. I've had terrific conversations with authors, filmmakers, artists, fellow podcasters, friends, and all fellow fans about movies, comics, TV shows, cartoons, and more. And I've gleaned a few things in those conversations. As fans, we have a lot of touchstones, memories that we connect that have shaped our lives as fans. Like the first time we saw Star Wars, watching Optimus Prime die in the Transformers movie that still gets me to this day, or singing along with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song. And for those of us that grew up in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, part of that connective fan tissue resides in our memories of the video store, whether it was Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or West Coast Video, a local mom and pop shop rental store, or even Family Video that's still going strong today. Many of us have video store memories, and I was able to convince some of my previous guests to share their own video store memories. Some are more introspective, some of them are, well, you just had to be there. But if you were ever kind enough to rewind, I think you'll appreciate this episode. In this first segment, I talk with my good friend and fellow fan, Andre Walker. I've known Andre for over 20 years, and he's joined me on a number of fan-to-fan episodes, discussing everything from Marvel Cinematic History to 90s superhero TV to canceled too soon cartoons. Throughout our friendship, Andre has shared some of his video store memories with me, so I hope you'll enjoy some of them as much as I have. Here we go. With me today is a returning good friend and fellow fan, Andre Walker. What's going on, Andre?
What's up, B?
So this episode is all about video store memories, and we come from an era, Dre, where we actually have some video store memories. So I figured I would ask you if you have any that you would like to share.
I got maybe one or two. Probably the one memory that sticks out for me is we didn't have, back in the day.
Back in the day.
There were two types of video cassettes players. There was the VHS, which was the popular one, and there was the Betamax.
The Great War of VHS and Betamax.
Yeah. My parents chose poorly. They chose Betamax. And if anybody can remember Betamax, there was a very, very limited selection of movies in Betamax.
And if I remember right, when you would go to video stores, even video stores had to make that decision whether they would carry VHS or Betamax, and usually it was more of one than the other.
Yeah. So basically, our local video store had a huge selection of VHS movies, but a very, very small selection of Betamax movies.
Did they have a small section separate for the Betamax, or did they put them next to the VHS?
It was right next to the VHS. It was like, this side was for VHS and this side was for Betamax. It's just that the VHS section was like two walls long, and the Betamax section was like two or three shelves or something like that. So it was a very small selection. And I remember the local video store we went to was called Taylor Video around my house. When we got the Betamax, it was like the greatest thing ever. You could go rent movies and watch movies. I didn't really understand the whole Betamax VHS thing. So when I went in there, I just kept grabbing a movie, and they kept, nope, you can't get that. Nope, you can't get that. Nope, you can't get that one. And they explained to me that we have a Betamax, not a VHS, and I can only rent these movies. So I went to the Betamax section, and there was not only did they have a small selection, they had a small selection of like good movies that were on Betamax. I think they had like Karate Kid and some other movies like Big Trouble in Little China and stuff like that. It was this one movie called, I think, The Eliminators. I think you saw it.
Yeah.
It had a cool cover, and it was one of those bad 80s movies that, you just watch on cable back in the day that's just so horrible.
One of the best covers of all time. It had the Mandroid. Mm-hmm. It had the bad Indiana Jones ripoff. It had the Karate Guy. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So whenever I would go to rent something from the store, that was the only thing that I rented from the video store. And the lady there just thought that I must have really, really loved the movie. And I did like the movie. It was cool, but it was the best movie they had on Betamax. And it was just, she just got a kick out of it because she asked me one day, like, you must really love this movie. Every time your parents bring you here, this is the movie you grab. Was it, what's so good about this movie? And I was like, and I told her, it's the only thing on Betamax that you guys is worth a damn watching. You know, it was kind of funny too at the time. So we finally eventually switched over to VHS, but it was kind of cool to go there every time. I just had fond memories of going to that video store and just looking at the same like 10 Betamax movies and knowing that I was going to rent the same movie every time. I mean, I went there and I actually took my time and I looked, and it would end up renting the same one movie every time I went there. So that's probably like one of the fun memories I have going back and thinking about it now. One of the other times was actually at a video store where it wasn't really about movies. It was a video store around my aunt's house called, I forget the name of the video store, but we went there one time to go and rent movies.
And wait, it was a mom and pop video?
It wasn't like
a Blockbuster.
Yeah. Some of my favorite video stores is going to a mom and pop video. And we went there to look around. Me and my cousin went there to look around to see if we had some movies. And we saw that they had some video games sitting out there. And it was like, oh, well, you know, they got this game just sitting out here. And we kept looking down the aisle, and they had more and more games out there. And we were like, what do they got these video games for? And we went and asked the counter.
Wait, and what video game system was it for?
I believe it was for the NES. It was for the NES. We went and asked the lady at the counter, why are all these video games sitting out here? And she was like, oh, we rent them. And it was like, what? You can rent video games? Because, you know, in my time, it's like if you wanted to play it, you had to buy it.
Yes.
That's the only way you could play it. You had to buy the game. And then that was the first time me and my cousin found out that you could actually get a game that you didn't pay for, and you could take it home and play it. And it was the greatest thing in the world. We was like, you had to get a membership, and my aunt had a membership there, so I went and called her, asked her, because she put me on her membership. She said, put my nephew on my membership.
And this is in the day when you had to pay like a membership fee on top of the individual rental fee. So if you wanted to rent a movie, you were paying like $50, $100 a year, and then you would have so many people you could put on that list. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, you're paying a few dollars to rent the video game or the movie.
Mm-hmm. But even still, it was just so cool that, back in the day, the games were like $40 now. Oh, yeah. So for like $4, we could rent any game we wanted. If we didn't like it, we could take it right back, and we went out any money. So we killed that video store. We went there every time. And the video store wasn't close by. It was like I stayed on the west side of Chicago. My aunt stayed on Austin.
Okay.
So we had a good little trek to go. And since we were kids, we didn't have any money. The money that we had was for the rental. Mm-hmm. So we ended up walking from my house to the video store and back.
Of course, if that gets you another rental. Then...
Exactly. Why use the bus fare when we could use that money for another rental? So we're talking about at least a good 45-minute walk, an hour-long walk, you know, and for kids to go up there, there was the excitement of going to this video store and see what new games they had, and then renting the game and walking all the way back and playing the game. And then if the game wasn't any good, you kind of like, oh crap, we wasted all this time. But if the game was great, like, oh my god, this is the greatest game of all time. So,
and the selection too, where you could go to the stores. Like, remember at Toys R Us where they had the little pouches, and you could take the little piece of paper to the counter, and there was the guy behind like the currency exchange glass window at the Toys R Us, and you would have to look up at the poor guy, and you would give him the little piece of paper, and he would go through like that back inventory room and pull out that video game. Well, you didn't have that. You could literally pick up every single box for every single cartridge at your video store and say, well, what about this one? What about this one? Should we pick up Rad Racer or should we pick up Excite Bike?
Exactly.
Well, why don't we pick up Excite Bike now, and then we beat it, and then we'll come back and get Rad Racer.
Exactly. And that was the thing, that we would take it home, try to beat the holy hell out of the game before, because you had a certain amount of days you had to rent it before you had to pay the late fee. We beat the holy hell out of it, and then we take it right back up there. Sometimes we would play the game like all day. We'd get up to crack of dawn, walk there, be there when the store opens, rent the game, come back before the store closed so we can have enough time to rent another game before that night was over. We tried to finish it. So yeah, so that was like the best. And then the last time was another video store we found called People Video. It was in the Forest Park area. They let us get a membership ourselves. We didn't have to pay a membership fee.
How old are you guys?
Oh shoot, I don't remember, B. We were young though. We were still in an NES days. So
okay,
it was still in NES days. And
I'm talking like high school age, or
yeah.
Okay.
And I thought that, I had to get my mom or my aunt to come out there and get a membership because they had a different selection of games out there.
Did you even have an ID to present?
I didn't have an ID. I had a school ID, but the guy, the clerk there, he was a cool guy. He said, "No, you guys don't need to have an ID up here membership. Just go ahead and sign up, and you guys rent the games." And I was like, "You sure?" Yeah. So we signed up there, and that place became like my new home. People Video. We went there all the time. We rented movies there, and sometimes I drive past. I think it's a laundromat or it's a tax place or something now. Sometimes when I drive past there, I kind of get like a little small tear runs down my cheek because I remember going to this place and the guy.
Memories.
Yeah. And we would go in there and we would BS talk to the guy in the store. Like, oh, did you finish this game? Oh, yeah, we finished this game. It was a really good game. What'd you think about this game? Oh, this game wasn't too good. It was good. So it was pretty cool. Those are probably my 3 favorite video store memories of me growing up.
I remember my game that I tried to beat that I would rent over and over again was Slalom, because it was impossible to beat. It was the NES game where you would basically ski down a hill and you would try to get through the flags.
Okay.
Do you remember what was the game that you guys either you rented over and over again because you couldn't beat it, or maybe opposite? It was a game that you beat and you guys were so happy that you were able to do it.
The one game that we probably rented the most was Ninja Gaiden came out with like a trilogy.
Yeah.
I bought the first 2. And then Ninja Gaiden 3 was, I think, a hard game to find. We couldn't really find it anywhere to buy, but they had it at People Video, so we would rent it. And that game, all the other Ninja Gaidens you could play and you could kill. If anybody who knows Ninja Gaiden knows how hard it is.
Double jump.
Yeah, double jumping and clinking to the walls and the stupid birds and all that stuff. If I remember correctly, the third Ninja Gaiden had a limited amount of continues. So if you got killed, if you got killed 3 times, you had to start all over again. With the other Ninja Gaidens, you can keep getting killed and you can just start. They'll just start you from the last level. But this one, you only had 3 continues. So if you got killed, even if you got toward the last level, if it was your last continue, you got killed, you had to start all over again. So we didn't have the patience to finish the game because we kept starting all over again. So we would rent it, try it, return it, rent it again, try it, return it, rent it again, try it, return it. To this day, I don't think we ever finished that game because that game was just crazy, ridiculous hard. But yeah, so that's probably the game I remember the most that we rented the most, just because of that factor of not being able to finish it in one sitting. So, but that's probably one of my favorite memories when I think about the old school video stores.
Good old days.
Yes, sir.
With Movies and More, the best seat in the house is right in your own living room. If you thought you had to spend a fortune to see the latest blockbusters, think again. Movies and More gives you Hollywood's best for the price of a popcorn alone. Need a TV, camcorder, or a VCR? Call Movies and More. Get a free lifetime movie club membership just by buying a new VCR from us. Movies and More, with the best seat in the house.
Up next is Pete Charbonneau, one half of the So Bad It's ... podcast. Pete and fellow host John Zeminski tackle pop culture topics and memories like Halloween costumes, Army Men, and the Ice Cream Man. After hearing their first episode, I quickly subscribed to their show, which you can also do on iTunes, and I'm fortunate Pete was kind enough to share one of his video store memories with me. All right, Pete, so what do you think? Video store memories.
Yeah.
The things that you and I grew up with, and not just by sake of nostalgia. This is something that was a part of our childhood, something that we grew up with and has influenced people like you and me who grew up with video stores.
It really was. I mean, and Blockbuster aside, before Blockbuster kind of came along and the chain stores came along, those mom and pop video stores, as VCRs and VHS tapes were slowly burgeoning, really a magical place. It seemed like there was a whole world opened up to you of all these films that you could just pluck off the shelf and see, especially when you could go there without your parents' supervision. If you knew the owner, didn't matter what you were renting, aside from the little porn section, which I will get into. That is one of my fond, or maybe not so fond, memories. One of my great video store memories was we had this place called Unreal Video in the Wisconsin Plaza, growing up on Long Island, this tiny little shop in this little strip mall. Just great. I mean, I could ride my bike there, I could walk there, and they had these little green tabs that you would pluck out from where the box of the video that you wanted to rent. So you just would take the tab up to the counter, and you could just grab as many as you'd like. So one time, a friend and I were having a sleepover, so we were loading up on some horror movies. So I had about a good 5 or 6 green tabs up at the counter. I lay them down, and they go to take the tab, go to the back to grab the actual tape to give to us. And off to the right of the counter was the little porn room where there was the hardcore porn videos that were concealed by those beads that you would walk out from. It was something out of the 70s, even though it was the 80s. So obviously, as a teen, preteen, you knew this existed, and you would always try to take a peek in there to maybe glance at a cover of one of the porn videos and maybe catch a glimpse of a naked woman. So anyway, I'm up there, we're about to get our videos, and I hear the beads rattle, and someone walks out. That someone was my dentist, and I'm going to name names, Dr. Fred Last, and an appropriate name because that was the last time that I ever went to him as my dentist, because I'm just thinking in my head, like, there's no way I could have this man's hands anywhere near my mouth after watching him coming out with a bunch of X-rated videos in his hands. So I never went to him ever again, but I hope he enjoyed his selections that night.
No, you're right, because the adult section was limited to these mom and pop stores. You did not find them in the franchises, these poorly lit rooms separated by beaded curtains, and it allowed these mom and pop stores to stay open a little longer when you have Hollywood Video, West Coast Video, and Blockbuster competing. And then there was that nice difference between the hardcore stuff that your dentist is looking and then the softcore stuff that you saw, in like exploitation, like horror and sci-fi films down the aisle where it was just like, oh my God, this scantily clad, very buxom woman is on the cover of this VHS cover. I must get it. And it's okay, Mom, because it's PG. I'm just going to show you the back cover.
Right.
But yeah, that was the other area, the seedier part of the video store.
Yes, and obviously when you're a teen, it's the forbidden fruit. Like, you shouldn't be back there. So any chance that you could get, like if the beads parted or if it was a door opened, you would immediately your eyes would have to go there because you wanted to see what you shouldn't be seeing back there.
The parting of the beads.
The parting of the beads. It's a rite of passage, the parting of the beads. But that reminds me of another quick one, that the first video store that we ever got a membership to, and this was back when like memberships were like $50 or $100 a year. Like, this was like just starting out. You had to pay money, and then you had to pay money to like rent on top of it. We were trying to just rent something. They had a Duran Duran video, and I want to say it was like a bunch of their early videos. So it was like Girls on Film and things like that. And Girls on Film, like the uncut video, is pretty racy, and I think there's nudity in it. I didn't know this. We were like, my brother and I were like 12 and 9 years old respectively, and we liked Duran Duran, so we wanted to watch the video. And I remember my mom taking it up, and the clerk was like, "No, I can't rent this to you." And we're like, "Why not? It's Duran Duran." He's like, "Yeah, no, this is pretty racy." He's like, your kid shouldn't be watching this." So like, you kidding me, man? We just want to watch some videos. So I never got to see that video until much later.
The gatekeeper that was the video store clerk.
Yeah, gatekeeper. On one level, I give him credit because he easily could have just been like, "Yeah, you kids have fun. You're in for a treat." But he actually was like, "I can't in good conscience rent this to your sons to watch this." And I hope my mom felt that she was well taken care of by that clerk that day, because my brother and I were pretty pissed off. So we had to go rent I think Enter the Ninja instead.
Nothing wrong with Enter the Ninja.
Right, it's not a bad number 2.
No, not at all. And I'm sure there was probably an Enter the Ninja on the in the porn side. It was just probably... Actually, no, it was probably also called Enter the Ninja.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
We'll continue sharing video store memories in a few seconds. But in the meantime, remember you can find the Fan to Fan podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan to Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN, or on Twitter at Fan to Fan Podcast. I'd love to hear from you, so reach out, send a message, and let me know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
Chad Lind is my next guest. Amongst his many talents, Chad is a comedian, musician, and podcaster who has been kind enough to join me on the Fan to Fan podcast for a number of episodes where we've discussed director John Carpenter, his 1978 horror classic Halloween, and 1973's Westworld movie. Chad was also kind enough to share a fun video store memory that I think you'll enjoy.
Yeah, I managed a video store for 18 months. My video store memories. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with a quick story, which was that the video store that I worked at was in Highland Park, Illinois, and I got a job there as a full-time employee, just a regular clerk. And the owner of the video store was insane. He had this horrible temper. He was this very wealthy man. He had a very nice wife and kids, and he was crazy. But he would call employees, like you'd get a phone call. Certain employees would get phone call while they were at work at the middle of the night, or like 11 o'clock on a Saturday or something, and he would just be screaming at them. And then they would hang up, but for whatever reason, he really liked me. I don't know what it was, but he really liked me, and he eventually made me the manager of the store. And then he decided, after I was manager, basically the other manager quit because he got in this huge argument with him. So I had to work 2 weeks in a row of 65 plus hours until they found another manager. Instead of finding another manager, what they found was a buyer, someone who wanted to buy the store from him. And so he sold it very quickly with very little fuss. I basically met the new manager that he put in charge, and this guy was a freewheeling, younger, older than me, but in his late 20s. And he was part of this group of people who just were deciding to invest in buying video stores out because for some reason they thought there was a future in video stores. And anyways, it turns out what they wanted to do was turn them into adult video stores. So it started very, very quietly. All of a sudden, in this Highland Park, Illinois, which is this very wealthy suburb that isn't crazily conservative, but it's fairly conservative, there was a little back room where there was a curtain. And
did it have beads?
It didn't have beads, but it was a black curtain. It was so sketchy. And that's where the first 15 or 16 titles were. And then pretty soon, the black curtain expanded, and the area that used to be sports and fitness was now porn. And pretty soon, 40 to 50% of the store was porn. Basically, what we were carrying was new releases. You had a new release wall, you had employee picks, and then you had porn. And I quit soon after that, mostly because I'd seen all the porn. But I quit soon thereafter because it just felt weird. But the thing that I found that was so interesting that was just these people that you had seen, that you had got to know as patrons coming in to buy movies.
And we're talking classic films. This is the person that's coming in, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, Maltese Falcon, and now they're moving on to...
Hey, you. Got your pizza right here.
And does it have sausage?
Oh, yeah. It's hot.
Right. All of a sudden what happens is mommy and the daughters and the kids are suddenly not there during the video trip. It is just the dad, and it's, okay, we're going to take these four. I'm going to take Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then, anal cheerleaders. It was what the fuck? But it was fascinating how quickly it just went from okay, this is here. That's how they're going to make money. And they did. They eventually had to close because video went out of style, but it was, it did very well. The first year, the first few months I stayed there, when they really, really expanded the porn selection, it became much more profitable. That's one of my stories. Can I do a couple?
Oh, by all means.
The other one, there's another couple, but another just story was that there was these two kids who used to work for me. This was before it had become Pornland, pretty much, and were this kid named David and this kid named Josh, and they were both in high school, and they were really, really funny, and we got along very well. I was their boss. But I loved working with them because they were twisted and funny and weird. And Josh was also this enormous Chicago Bulls basketball fan. He lived and breathed that team. And so this was after the Bulls had won their second championship and were working at the store in Highland Park. And one day I'm working with Josh, and we're getting ready to close, and it's 5 minutes till we close, and there's no one in the store, and all of a sudden, Michael Jordan walks in. And at this point in time, he was huge. He wasn't quite legendary yet, but he was still shopping for his own videos, late at night. And so he walks in, and Josh, I thought Josh was going to just become the embodiment of sweat. His armpits started sweating, his face started sweating. He was free. He couldn't, like I kept saying, could you go put the movies away? The new releases away. He wouldn't move from behind the counter. He would not move. He was petrified. And so Jordan used to come in 5 minutes before we'd close when there was no one there, so no one would bother him. And he'd get like 20 movies at a time. And then he'd come up, he'd pay the late fee for the 20 movies that he had returned late before. And then he would rent these new movies. And so he came up after about 5 or 6 minutes. I went and locked the front door so nobody else could come in while he was there. And he comes up to the counter, and he's got this big stack of movies. And I look at him, and the way that it used to work was that members would have a card, and you would swipe the card. But Michael Jordan wasn't going to have a fucking membership card to our video store. So the other way would be to look it up by the person's phone number. But obviously, Michael Jordan wasn't going to give me his fucking phone number. So I'm going to have to look it up by last name. So I go into the system, and he's standing there, and I'm like, oh, how you doing? And I type in Jordan, and six different Jordans come up from the area. And I go, okay, Jordan, your first name, sir? And he starts laughing, and he goes like, man, it's Michael. And I was like, oh, Michael Jordan. And he laughed all the way out the store, like he was laughing the whole fucking time. And Josh looked at me, he was like, you're the biggest fucking asshole I've ever met.
But you think Michael Jordan is laughing on the way out. Obviously, he didn't take affront to it. He thought it was great.
Right. It was this great, dichotomy of emotional responses. Like, he couldn't believe that I was comfortable enough to just say, to make the joke. And one of the reasons I was comfortable was because I could see how ridiculous Josh looked being uncomfortable. So it was like I was feeding off that energy, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try to make Michael Jordan laugh, because I loved him too. But it was just like, so that was the other story. And then when it comes to just strictly, really, that working at that video store is what helped consolidate my love for movies, because you could take anything out. That was the thing. Like, no matter who the owner was, I could, and it wasn't like it is now where you can go online and say, okay, if I subscribe to Hulu, there's 9,000 Criterion movies. If I subscribe to this, there's this, and I can look them up online and find out all this shit about them. It was much more like kind of piecemeal, where I knew people like, I knew of Bergman and Truffaut and people like that, but it wasn't easy to see their movies back then.
Sure.
But I worked in a video store. So I would be like, okay, I heard this movie Persona was supposed to be a complete mindfuck. And so I rented it, and I watched it at like 10:30 at night, and it actually made me nauseous. Like, it was so, like, it hit me on so many different levels, and it was so different than anything that I'd seen, that it actually made me feel ill. The way that it was, and I just that visceral reaction to movies that I was lucky enough to have access to because I worked at this place was really important to me, like building my library of things that I'd seen. My experiences with movies were to a large extent because of that video store.
It's funny because that made me think of a conversation a friend of mine, Pete, and I had on one of the previous episodes, and we were talking about when you've seen a movie and you've met someone else who has seen the same movie, and the more esoteric you get, sometimes the better. But when you have that knowing moment where you both have seen the same movie and you know what you're either quoting or what you're referencing, but when you think of something like, so the situation that we'd come up with was, it's wear your jersey day at work. So you have football, hockey, baseball team, whatever it is. And then you have that one person that comes in with a Baseball Furies jersey. You have that other person that just kind of looks at them and just has that knowing glance of, I know what you're doing.
Warriors, come out to play.
I see you. I get it. But then you think of, okay, so I've had this conversation with my wife where she talks about how a movie will come on and I'll remember moments from it, lines, and I'm like, oh, why don't you have those touchstones like I do? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right, because you were going out drinking and having a good time and kissing under the bleachers while I was watching creature features and family classics, as a kid. I wasn't going out getting drunk in someone's basement. This is how I was, getting in touch with the world. So you think for someone who had access to all of these films, it's like you were building some massive knowledge base of film so that you could go to someone and laugh at the Baseball Furies comment I just made and still talk about Ingrid Bergman and Truffaut in the same sentence and say, no, like the knowledge base is there. I get it. I know why the Warriors comment is funny, but those are the things that I think are interesting. It's a language all unto its own.
I agree. And what I really like about getting older and becoming a little more mellow and less of a dick, is that the language of film is much more expansive. I wasn't too much of a snob, but I would write off people who really got into movies that I didn't like. Not completely, but I just didn't want to talk about movies with them. It was almost a competitive thing. And part of that comes from being on the other end of it, where people are just like, why the fuck is Raging Bull in black and white?
Yes. And I think maybe those are, right, those are like the steps of evolution. You get over the fact that, oh, this was a good movie, even if it was in black and white. And then you get to the next part where you're like, oh, this film has subtitles. Right. But but it's a really good movie, so I'm going to watch it. It's when you start kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to put aside the fact that it's not in English and it's not in color and it's not from my era, and yet it's still good.
Oh, right. And that's what I was going to say is like, and now I'm at the point where I'm lucky enough to spend a good portion of my life in creative situations, like be it at the theater or recording with people. It's in getting to know people, some of whom are students, who are younger than I am. Some of them are, older. But what I really like is now I'm at a point, and I think, it's just important to recognize how important conversations about film are. Even if it's like the 15-year-old kid who volunteers at the theater all the time wanting to talk to me about Deadpool or any of the other superhero movies, instead of like I would have done 15 years ago or, even a decade ago, of just being like, yeah, those aren't really my thing. Listening to him starting to put together his own, like you said, language based on what he's noticing in film and realizing that it's not always going to be superhero films. He's going to see something else too. And he's talking about different shots and different plot choices and angles and lighting and all effects and all that shit. And that's fascinating. And it's really cool to be older and open to all of these discussions that fall under the umbrella of film.
Getting old ain't so bad.
No, it's not.
We'll conclude our walk down video store memory lane in a few seconds. But in the meantime, if you are listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate and review. Just search for the Fan to Fan podcast, go under reviews, enter a star rating, or write a review if you have a second or two, and click send. That's how easy it is. I will greatly appreciate it. Thanks. Kevin Folliard is my next guest. He's an author with a number of publications under his belt, including his Scary Stories collections, Christmas Terror Tales, and Valentine Terror Tales, the dark fantasy novel Jake Carter and the Nightmare Gallery, and the young adult horror adventure Violet Black and the Curse of the Camp Coldwater. You can find out more about Kevin at his website, www.kevinfolliard, FOLLIARD.com. Kevin joined me in episode 34 of the Fan to Fan podcast to discuss kid-friendly horror, and like those of us whose childhood was entrenched in the 80s, he was nice enough to share one of his video store memories.
I guess for me, I remember going to the local video store with my dad, on Fridays or whatever. We would pick out movies, and there was a lot that I used to rent frequently as a real little kid. I loved Sesame Street's Follow That Bird was like my favorite movie. I don't know why my parents didn't just buy it for me, because we probably rented it like every weekend from the video store. But I liked that. We used to rent those Shelley Duvall Fairy Tale Theater videos. They had like a series of videos, and we would just rent Hansel and Gretel or, Rumpelstiltskin or all these scary, weird fable type stories. But I definitely remember distinctly was when I was a young kid being at the video store and looking through the horror section, kind of like a little bit afraid and a little bit fascinated, and looking at all these movies like the Halloween series and all these like direct to video store scary movies that had these creepy cool covers. So I would look at those and just kind of peruse it, not touch the case, but be really intrigued by some of the artwork and the titles and the stuff that I was seeing. That was a lot of it, like I said, was probably Roger Corman direct to video kind of stuff. But it was I knew I was interested, but I wasn't really thinking I could handle it. So that's kind of the most relevant video store story I can think of for me.
And that's at a time when VHS covers were good.
They were really cool. That's what probably fascinated me, is that the cover art was probably awesome. And I was just this looks cool, but I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look like it's for me. And I want to look at it, but I don't know if I should, So it's kind of the video store being a little bit of a window into your soul, where it's wherever you're gravitated looking at those movies, it's tells you a little bit something about yourself, maybe.
Nobody has the movie I want.
Hey, if it's on video, Blockbuster probably has it. I mean, we have over 10,000 videos.
Wow.
I'll watch these fast and have them back tomorrow, I promise. Relax. At Blockbuster, you can keep your videos for 3 evenings, so take home plenty. And use our 24-hour quick drop.
Do you have any children's videos?
Sure. Blockbuster's America's family video store. We have more kids' videos than any place else. More movies, more nights, more fun.
Blockbuster Video. Wow, what a difference.
Up next is Ed Glazer. Ed joined me in episode 37 of the Fan to Fan podcast to discuss unauthorized movie remakes from around the world. Movies like Turkish Star Wars, Italian Conan, and Nigerian Titanic. Yes, such things exist, and they are amazing. You should watch his award-winning web series Deja Vu to find out more about those movies. Just visit www.neonharbor.com for all his episodes and to see more of Ed's work. But in the meantime, listen to Ed's video store memory right here.
I'll try to be as coherent as possible. About 4 blocks from my house when I was a kid, there was a mom and pop video store called Stars and Stripes Video, and they later changed their name to The Video Store. And they had all kinds of films. Because they were a mom and pop store, they didn't just have the latest Hollywood movies. They also had some weird B movie stuff. And, I hadn't really gotten into a lot of that when I was a kid, and mostly I went there to rent Nintendo games. But I was really, really, really into Ghostbusters as a kid. Watched the cartoon religiously, saw the films a million times on video, and they had episodes of the show. And so when I wasn't just watching them on Saturday mornings, I could go there and rent one. And they also had this tape called Ghostbusters that looked a little bit different. And I never kind of got around to renting that one until I maybe got sick of the ones that I had been renting over and over again. And so got this other one, rented it, brought it home, only to discover that it is not the Ghostbusters that I knew and loved, but was in fact a different animated series also called Ghostbusters, based on an old 60s or 70s live action show featuring one of the guys from F Troop and a guy in a gorilla suit as ostensibly a gorilla. It's about these 2 guys and a gorilla in a talking car that go around and stop ghosts. I was completely confused.
Let's go!
It was absolutely not the thing I wanted, and maybe was my first real instance of VHS rental disappointment.
And wasn't if I remember right, whoever distributed the VHS for that Ghostbusters cartoon, at some point there was a bit of a controversy because there was porn, like a second or two of porn amidst one of the episodes, and a number of parent groups were complaining about that.
I was totally unaware of that. The only controversy I knew was that because they were based on an existing series that came before the more popular Ghostbusters, they could get away with calling themselves the original Ghostbusters.
Versus the real Ghostbusters, I guess.
With Slimer and everything. Yeah, exactly. I've since gone back and revisited the Filmation animated series with the monkey, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. But as a kid, if you're expecting Egon and you're getting Monkey, it's just not the same thing.
No, it's not.
If you're having a little trouble with the picture on the TV now, maybe you just need to adjust the tracking on your VCR. That's the little switcher button just at the bottom of your tape player. If you need help, just call Mom or Dad or Big Brother or Big Sister. They'll help you.
Last but not least is Oren Gray. Oren is a writer, editor, and amateur film scholar whose stories have appeared in dozens of anthologies, including 2 collections of his own original works titled Never Bet the Devil and Other Warnings, and Painted Monsters and Other Strange Beasts, both of which I highly recommend, and you can find out more on Oren's website, www.orengray.com. Oren and I discussed John Carpenter's 1980 film The Fog in episode 39 of the Fan to Fan podcast, and in this last installment, he shared one of his own video store memories.
So when I was younger, we didn't have access to very many video stores. Like, we lived in a fairly small town, and so there was just a grocery store, and the grocery store had a little video corner where I rented, every horror movie that was there, pretty much, which mostly were like 80s and 90s schlock stuff, and a lot of full moon movies, so Puppet Master movies and all that kind of thing. But when I was in college and when I graduated from college, I actually worked in video stores for about 3 years. I worked in first a locally owned store, and then worked for Blockbuster for a year, sort of toward the end of Blockbuster's reign as a video store, right before they closed down and went bankrupt and so on. So I have a lot of memories of working in video stores, both good and bad.
Please share, especially it's easy to forget that video stores were not just freestanding stores and were not always these massive franchises like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. Some of them were literally just little segments of your local grocery store that had a few shelves dedicated to some movies, and they may not have had the latest releases or classics, but they had some terrific films, like you said, some great 70s and 80s sci-fi and horror B movies and what have you, but movies that outside of those shelves on those grocery stores, people like me may not have discovered, something like Return of the Living Dead or whatever it is.
Absolutely. I'm a big film nerd and a big horror film nerd, but I've always loved film, but I came to an extensive knowledge of it only recently, to the extent that I even have one now, because when I was growing up, we had 3 TV channels. And so if a movie wasn't on one of those 3 TV channels or at my local grocery store, I had no way to see it. And so, I've seen this weird patchwork of movies, and I've been trying to fill in the gaps as an adult, of course. But, up until a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I'd never seen an Alfred Hitchcock film, like never even one, because they just didn't have them at the video store that I had available to me. So I had never seen any Alfred Hitchcock film, and I watched as many of them as I could in 1 month, one time. Now that I have more access and we have Netflix and streaming service and DVDs, and I can get them from the library, and there's so many different ways to get movies. But, when I was a kid, I had this very limited selection, and so I watched the things I watched over and over again, but the things that I didn't have access to, I just never saw. And there's these huge gaps. I've only recently discovered Italian horror cinema because my rental place didn't have anything like that. I mean, just things like that. And I think there's probably a lot of people who had that same situation where, like, yeah, I know all about, Puppet Master 4, by God, but I've never seen Suspiria or whatever, I think there's a lot of people who had that same experience where the selection of their local video store determined what they know about movies.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I saw The Beyond, and it was at a midnight showing at the Music Box in Chicago with a friend of mine, and it was midnight when it started, finished about 2 o'clock, but walking out of Fulci's The Beyond. It's a creepy enough sensation as it is, but then as we left, there was a midnight bike ride that just happened to pop up in front of us as we're at a stoplight, and we both had this very strange look at each other and then also at this mass of bicyclists that were just kind of going through the intersection completely unaware and uncaring of the cars, but just like, wait, are we watching this? Like, what's going on? We just came out of this Italian horror movie that was terrific, but movies that were absolutely not at our local video stores unless it really was you had to have someone who was aware of that cinema to even bring in stuff like that, outside of things like you said, Suspiria, Persona, or what have you.
Right, absolutely. So beyond all that, I will leave you with a particular a video store memory from when I worked at a video store that is more funny than illuminating. But so when I worked at the independently owned video store, which is called Couch Potato Video, which was owned by a good friend of mine. Now, at the time, he was just my boss, but I worked there, and at one point, I had a customer come in, and he rented this made-for-TV Mira Sorvino and Donald Sutherland movie called Human Trafficking. And he was gone maybe 45 minutes, not even long enough to finish the movie. And he comes back in, he slams the movie down on the counter, and he is irate. And he is so angry, and he wants to return the movie. And I'm like, all right, sir, it's fine. And he says, he looks me in the eye and he says, "Do you have any idea what this movie is about?" And I look back at him for a little bit and I go, I guess not. And he goes, "Human trafficking." And I'm like, all right, sir, I'll refund your money. So I refunded him and sent him on his way. I don't know what the background of that was, but that was one of my more video store exchanges.
Hopefully something he didn't have to deal with on his own, because that would be really sad.
It was very strange.
Yes, it's like, sir, would you like a more uplifting movie, like the Care Bears movie or something along those lines? In that movie, they're not actually bears, but they do care, unlike Human Trafficking, where, yes, there may be human trafficking involved.
Right. What were you expecting it to be about? I'm very confused. Although I also did convince someone at one point that 28 Days was the prequel to 28 Days Later, so.
Oh, that's terrific. Yes, Ben Affleck and Sandra Bullock, right?
Right.
Yeah, here are these two people dealing with addiction and how they kind of find each other before they're infected by the rage virus.
Yep.
Yes. The politics of video stores at their time, and now you think of something like that, you go into Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, or whatever,
right,
and you rent the movie Human Trafficking. iTunes, Google, and Amazon have your $2.99, so it really doesn't matter what you thought the movie,
right,
exactly, or what you thought the movie was about. They have your money, and for the next 24 hours or however long you rented it for, you can choose not to watch it or just hate watch it, I guess. But then outside of not just dealing with all of the amazing aspects of retail, you also had a person who, unlike in a grocery store, you're like, oh, this milk was bad. All right, well, we'll return it, get another milk. That's fine. In this case, you're talking about personal taste. Oh, this movie sucked. I want my money back. Well,
right,
you watched it. You rented it,
Yeah.
But like you said, 45 minutes later, not enough time to finish it. Maybe enough time to realize, well, maybe not, but maybe enough time to realize what it's about and the fact that you don't like it.
No, it was a very different world back then.
That's it for this episode. Tune in next time for more fan-to-fan conversations on the Fan-to-Fan podcast. Thanks for listening.
Out of the night came a fate worse than death. A man's mind twisted, his brain poisoned, with an uncontrollable lust to kill.